Then, sometimes it's easy to look at only the causes and effects of global warming and feel that the problem is just too big. It's a huge problem. But this is not the case, at least not without help. So we can ask ourselves to begin with the source of the problem, to determine where we can look for an answer. So really, the first place to look would be with the industries and the government. As discussed by Nicole, one of the main sources of global warming is the burning of fossil fuels. On these industrial levels, it's a huge use for their energy and their production, so it's just a huge area to begin with. So let's look at, how can we change that? First of all, industries, being that they're a huge part of the problem, they really do have a say in how it can be fixed. They can dig deep to adjust their budgets and integrate new methods for energy to reduce these emissions that they have. So they can have a day where they burn less, maybe turn a day off for production. They can integrate methods of wind and water energy, any method like that to try and save on their own behalf rather than waiting for the government to make the decisions for them. So now if we move on to the government, they also have a large persuasion angle when it comes to correcting and preventing global warming. They have methods like they can increase tax breaks and grants. A lot of us have been part of the electric vehicle phase, things like that. They can give opportunity the same as they do to consumers, but they can give them to industries as well for reducing those emissions. They can put a cap or limit on emissions. They can make it more difficult, require more permits to have emissions coming out of the industries and out of certain places. So putting that cap on there limits how much they can produce, and if they go beyond that, then there's penalties. A drastic change would be that of China. They limited the population growth. China had gotten so big and there were so many vehicles going around and there's so many different industries booming that they actually had to limit the population because so much was being consumed and so many emissions were causing such a problem. With that in mind, that's another thing that the government can do, and they can adopt international treaties to limit the emissions, since much of the emissions that are in the world come from other countries as well. So working together, trying to clean up just this air isn't always feasible. So you have to work with everybody and try and get everybody on the same page as far as lowering emissions, just trying to get everything cleaner. So one of the treaties that they did adopt is that of the United Nations. It's a framework convention on climate change treaty. And they did put that into effect, and it's working with 4 other countries, trying to get everybody on the same page for these emissions. So, and we talk so much about the government and the industries, and although the problem is worldwide with them, and it's a local government and it's industries, and they have the first responsibility in making these changes to prevent global warming, but it's a huge problem and it doesn't always have to have these huge solutions. Consumers too have their own responsibility as well. And in a moment we're going to discuss those with Christina about our individual solutions on global warming. So at this time, are there any questions? Yeah. Who do we contact about the requirements on industries to reduce these emissions? That's a very good question. For each industry, it's got different limitations, but you can always contact the EPA or visit the EPA.gov, which is the Environmental Protection Agency, and they have wonderful information and insight into the different methods that have been used to prevent the global warming from these larger levels and also from the consumer level. So at this time, it's on to you, Christina. Thanks.